Hello friends, welcome back. My name is Tumikladi and this will be video number 11. In video number 9, we looked at, in fact, I said you should be aware of Razor Pages or the support of Razor Pages and MVC, right? And then I want to finish off that by talking about, on this video number 11, drop-down list in MVC and Razor Pages, right? Don't mind this file here. It's something I'm working on. It's a new feature, so don't mind this. So the focus is gonna be on the web version, which is covered issue _web, right? Remember, this is 2-in-1. It's both the MVC and Razor Pages, both running on .NET Core, right? So I want us to start. I have a couple of pages opened. One of them is register page. I want to start with that page, right? So let's go to areas, identity, pages, account, and we're gonna open register, and we'll come back to this. And then we need the code behind file of this guy, right? So that's the first one. Let's close. Then the second page is gonna be penalties, right? So let's go and get everything ready. Let's start with the page penalties and the add page. We'll come back to it. And we need the corresponding controller for it. So let's go and look for the MVC version, penalties controller, right? And then the last page is going to be notifications, right? We also needed the add. So let's start with the page notifications. There we go. Notifications, add, and we needed the corresponding controller. This cannot be here. Should be on the general MVC, and there we go. Right. So let's talk about drop down. There's a drop down here. I'm gonna talk about it. This guy, it's wired differently. Remember, register is part of identity system. Register page, the login, the forgot password, all of that, they're part of identity system in ASP.NET Core. And that is built with the support of Razor Pages. But I want to talk about one specific control, which is the drop-down list, right? This guy is wired differently than one of, if I go and say add, then this one, it's wired differently. If I go to notifications, say add, then these ones, they're wired differently. And I want to show you the difference and how I figured out and how I've learned that while one is good with MVC, one also has to adapt with the Razor Pages. So let's get started. I'm going to start with the penalty. Let's stay here. I'm going to start with this one, right? So let's cancel. So I'm not going to tell you what penalties are. Just know that I can issue penalties on the clients and customers. Let's just say customers who did not come and collect their shoes. So that's the idea, right? I'm gonna say add. First, I need to impose the amount, how much, right? I needed this to be dynamic, and then the nodes. But the most important thing is for what shoes. So right now, there's a condition to what shoes. I'm not gonna get into that, right? But just know that I have populated this shoes. Let's say select shoes with the actual shoes on the system. So let's see how I went about it. Penalties controller. So you need to know that happens on the add, right? The very first version of add, which is HTTP GET. Now you realize that this is public async task, right? And it's called add. It's because on the try, remember we spoke about try, and I made a video about Sentry. So this is a best practice. First, it's async task because I'm awaiting the results. There's a popular method. I like to call it popular method. It's a helper method. It's called populate the add view with these, right? Now, I'm awaiting that. The very first thing that you need to be aware of is that if there's an exception and you want to stay on the same page as I'm doing with return to the same view, make sure you still repopulate. Do not make a mistake that there's the only thing that you do on the try and you forget. There might be a reason why the exception occurs. For whatever reason, repopulate the add view with this, only if you are staying on the same view, right? So that's what you see here. So what is this guy? If we scroll down, we will see that there's a helper method. There we go. So it's a helper method. It's private async task, right? Now, on the service, I'm speaking to a penalty service and I'm saying get all shoes request async. In fact, I'm not getting specific shoes. I'm getting the request on those shoes. Those are two different things. That's how I build my system, right? So this just returns what? What does it return? It returns a list of a shoe request, right? So that's what I save it here on this variable, shoe request underscore list. There's a video I made about variables and how I name my variables, right? So know that there's a list, right? Then I'm gonna build a list of type select list item. When you work with a drop down, just know it's a select list, right? So the select list item, right? And I say shoes request item underscore list. Don't confuse this with this guy, right? Then I say, okay, new select list. It expected two things, right? A property of text and a property of a value. So now these two properties are a must to make sure that you have this guy. So the first one is a text, what appears to the end user, which is it says select shoes. That's what you need to be aware of to manipulate. The second one is the value. So I like to start off with a 0, and for a reason, I'll come back to it. Then when I'm done, so that means you first start off with this. Then the second part is in that list that's coming from the API, right? I'm gonna check the count if it's greater than 0. That means we have at least something. Other than that, it's gonna skip this if statement. But if we have something, I'm gonna loop inside that list. And then on this select list item, I'm gonna add a new select list item. Remember, the text property is gonna be the name of the shoe. So item accessing the shoes, getting the shoe name, right? And then the value is gonna be the shoe request ID. You need to make sure, because there's a GUID, you need to make sure that you make it as a string, because the value property is of type string. So I'm gonna make sure that I'm converting that to string, right? So basically, this is what you see here, the name, which is the text. This is the name of the shoe, right? Good. And then when I'm done, this is where now it's fundamental to understand this. There is a dynamic property. This is not just a property, it's called viewback. You see this almost everywhere, and I love this since I've learned the purpose of this. It's a dynamic one, right? Get the dynamic viewback. So viewback dot, you can give it any name. I don't like to confuse a viewback. I like to start with it keyword viewback and then shoes. Remember this name, and then I just assign. Remember what am I assigning? A list of select item. What it has a select list item that has two properties, right? Which is a text and value. Good. So that's how I'm injecting this view. So you get to see that. Good. So when you select a no name, right? How then do I read the data back? Let's go to the second version of the method. Remember, there's the first version, HTTP GET, right? We are done with it. Let's go to the second version, HTTP POST, right? Where now I'm getting data. I'm gonna go through the checks and everything. So let's show the add first. So this page that you see here is this page. Now, to move quickly, this TR table row, this is this guy, shoes, right? What I have is at html.dropdownlist. Now this dropdown list, the only thing that I'm interested in is this guy, viewback shoes. I don't pass in anything else. And other than that, I'm just manipulating how it's gonna look like. But I do not pass in anything else. This is MVC. So the only thing I'm linking is to that name, viewback shoes. That's the only thing. Now, going back to the controller, I'm gonna go to say request dot form, right? Which is this form. When I hit save or submit, go to this control. I want to convert whatever I get from it as a string, and this is where I'm gonna put the value, but as an ID. It's not gonna give me the name, it's gonna give me the value, what is behind it. So the ID, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna check if the shoe is selected. This is a helper method, never mind this guy. Then when I'm done is that on the shoe ID, I'm gonna pass it as a GUID. Remember, I sent it as a string, I went back as a GUID. That's how I get to read the data. Then that's all you need to know. Good, we are done with that. So I'm gonna close the penalties and the page. Then the last one is notification. Well, the second last one. Now notifications, let's go to the controller, or we are on the controller. Let's start with the very first version of the ad, which is this one. Also, async task, it's inside try catch block, populate, make sure that if there's an exception. So let's go to this helper method. Now this one is quite different. That's why I want to make an example. So there's a populate the ad view with this. So there are three different drop down that I want to inject. So there is for category, priority, and the user. So let's start with the first one. View back again, view back categories, view back priorities, view back users. So when it comes to users, await says get all users. So let me start with this one quickly. This one, what I'm gonna do, I'm not gonna go again, explain because you already got the idea. First, I'm gonna talk to the API and say get all users async, right? And then I'm gonna say select user. That's what you see here, select user, right? Start with the value of 0, and if the list is greater than 0, the count of it, then I'm gonna loop inside. Then this is where now you can put in the conditions. This is where now the flexibility comes in. If that username, it's not the crew, and the username is not the Google user. There's a Google user because of when I send my app to Google Play Store, they have to review it. Do you understand? So there is a specific user that I have. It's just for viewing purpose because they have to log into the app and see certain things. So if it's not Google user, it's not me, right? I want you now to inject every single user in there. So that this is what you see. You won't see me, but you also won't see a user. And when I add an Apple user, I'm just gonna say and, do you understand, and Apple user, right? So you understand that one. Other than that, I have a helper class under utilities. There is a helper class. It does a lot, this one. So in there, in there I have notifications categories. Well, notification categories for add page select list item. If I go to it, this is a helper method. What it returns, familiar, a list of select list item. Then I'm gonna build that list and say this is gonna be what I'm gonna return, right? Because this is what I return. So the first one is gonna say select category with the value of 0, and that's what you see here, right? Then other than that, I'm gonna have the default ones, which is the second one's gonna be general, shoes, payments, locations, and feedback. So I add on top of that one 5 more items on the list. So which is what you see here: general, shoes, payments, locations, and feedbacks. Right? Same thing that I do with priorities. Right? On the same class helper, I have priorities add, right? So I'm gonna go to it, select priority, start with the 0, there's a low, medium, and high. So if I quickly go there, there's low, medium, high, right? So this is it, right? And how do you read the data? Let's quickly go up on the second version of it. There we go. So the same thing, I'm making sure that, the ad first, the page first. So view back categories, view back priorities, view back users, right? You've seen this page, right? Good. Now, how do I read the data? So firstly is, again, on the form, go and request the data from this guy, convert it as a string, then you get it. Then I'm gonna check if drop-down list item selected. It's a helper method that helps me to check, because you can't hit save without having to select something there, right? Other than that, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get the ID to go to the ID because it's of type string. Then I'm gonna get a priority string, so I'm going to go there, and user ID is you understand? Good, we are done with that. I'm gonna close it. Close the helpers. Then finally, the Razor, which is this guy. Why is it different? The account type on the register page. So let's go to the view first, right? Now, if you look at the first thing is this div has a select tag. Select tag has SP-4, of which is going to speak it to register view model dot account type. That's a bind property. Sorry, if I go to the code behind, remember we have a property called register view model of type register view model, and this is what I'm exposing to it using bind property. So if I go to this class, here it is, register view model. So there is account type and display name is account type, hence you see account type here, right? Then we come to the control itself. Now the control itself, right? Oh, let's finish this. It has a SP-items. Look at what it says, a collection of select list item objects used to populate the select element with opt group and option elements. So what I'm doing there, I'm speaking to the model which is the entire page, right? This page here, it's a model itself. I can speak to this guy and access certain things, right? So the only way I can do it is I'm gonna access this guy. So model dot account types. If I remove that dot and say dot, you see that I have access to account types and amongst other things, but I need account types. So account type is a property of type select list. That's what I injected this guy, select list, right? Good. And then I build the options. The value will be choose account type. And this is what you see here, choose account type, right? But the items will come from account types. So let's take a look at that. First, let's go and study this class, select list. Well, it's a built-in one, so this is not mine, but just know I have this one, right? So on get, the first version, which is this one, you click the register and then you're gonna get to this view that says select, which is populate register page on get. So let's go and study that method. Here it is, private void populate register page. Now what you see there is that I have an object, I instantiate an object of a list of account types. So let's start with account types. It's just a helper class, public class account types. Then I have a properties, two types of them. The first one is of type integer, the second one is of type string. So then I have account type underscore ID, account type underscore name, right? So I build a list of it. And then the first one is gonna be, it's gonna have a type ID 1, and then this what's gonna be the name of it, partners and clients. Then the second one is gonna be have ID number 2, guests, visitors, and customers, of which this is what you see here. But how does it know about it? Good. So then what I do is on the account types, remember that one? Of type select list. I say new select list, and then I pass in, it expects a collection, enumerable items, which is that list, right? And then it expects string, data value field, and data text field. So value field is going to be what's hidden, and then data text field is going to be what I show to the end user. Again, this is what you're able to see. It's quite different than how MVC renders everything, right? So that's how I inject it, and that's it. So how I read the data after you select, say you want to be a guest, you just want to try out the platform, right? Now, when I need to read the data to get the value, I'm gonna read it from register view model account type. If it's 1, it's gonna be clients, else it's gonna be customers. That's how simple it is. I hope this makes sense. Listen, this is what I wanted to show when I say beware of the Razor support in MVC, even though you have chosen the project type to be MVC with identity system. This is something that you need to be aware of. As a developer, as a programmer, this is my final tip. We don't cram here. We learn and we study to understand. We don't cram and say, oh, just because I keep on doing view back, then it's going to be view back. No. There is a way to understand why using view back, and there's a way to understand why using select list. Hence, I want to show how MVC is embedded inside, how Razor support is embedded inside MVC, particularly looking at this control drop down. I hope that you found this very helpful. If you haven't subscribed, subscribe. If you haven't liked the video, like it. If you have any question, leave it down on the comment section below. Until next time.